And good morning, Pitch Breakfast. My name is Mike Vagalis. Thanks so much for having me. I'm the founder and CEO of Keepsake Tales, where we make the most personalized children's books in the world. Next. I'd like to start with just a quick question. Do I matter? In our consumer discovery of hundreds of people, we uncovered that children of every demographic are struggling with questions of value, of self-worth. They're trying to answer the question, do I matter? And it's really no surprise when children struggle to see themselves in the content that they consume, especially in the books that they read. It's no wonder that they struggle with questions of value. One mom told me, Mike, it would be so powerful if you could put my daughter Claire in the story because she has Down syndrome and they don't make books for kids like Claire. Next slide. See, we exist because we believe that all children are one of a kind. We believe that all children have intrinsic value, and we're building a business so that every child can understand that they do matter. Next slide. How do we do that? We're making the most personalized children's books in the world. Our illustration process starts with a picture of the child. We turn that picture into a cartoon that matches the illustration style of the story so that every child can see themselves as the champion of their story. And you see the face that Avery has in this picture? Right here, she understands that she has value. And that seriously fires me up. But it's not just me. Next slide. Our parents and customers think so too. Some of our favorite moments that we've had so far is seeing videos that parents have sent us of seeing their kids flip through the pages of their story, point at pictures of themselves in the story, and understand that they are valuable. It's been amazing to see them choose a keepsake tale over an iPad. Next slide. Now, I can hear what you're thinking. Sounds like a cute idea, Mike, but how big is the market? It's pretty darn big. We estimate a serviceable available market of over $2 billion and a beachhead market of almost $500 million. Our beachhead is a true blue ocean market, which is children of disabilities and sicknesses. We selected this market because, tragically, there are no viable market substitutes. We estimate that less than 0.5% of children's books today even include children with disabilities and sicknesses. Next slide. When we look at the competitive market, we ask two really important questions. First, are personalized children's books representations of the children, realistic depictions of those children? You can see in the top left the two market leaders, Wonderly and Hurry Heroes. We heard time and again in Discovery that those books don't really look like my child. Number two, are the depictions of the children coherent or consistent with the background illustration of the story? On the bottom right, you can see an example where it's patently not. They just take a picture and turn it on top of an illustration. For the first time with Keepsake Tales, you get both highly realistic representations of children and illustrations that match the background style of that story. Next slide. Our unit economics start with our base price point of $50, which we've demonstrated through primary research as our profit maximizing price point. Right now, we rely on a manual personalization process and drive unit economics of 4-to-1 lifetime value to acquisition cost. However, we've identified an automated approach which will drive major operational and cost efficiencies, improving our LTV to CAC ratio to 7-to-1. Next slide. We've based our revenue projections off the historical precedent already set by Hooray Heroes in this market, and we project by 2025 to have a $50 million business. Next slide. So who's making it happen? First, there's me. I'm more the business guy. I've led finance teams, a sales market, been a brand marketer, and got my MBA from Northwestern. And I'm growing daily in my abilities as a CEO to grow Keepsake. Then there's Erin. She's a social entrepreneur, publishing expert. She's been called the best children's author of our generation, and she's an amazing co-founder. Then there's Brian, who brings a lot of marketing muscle and technical acumen to the team. And finally, Steve Dudas, who's our children's literature PhD. So you can be sure we're not launching anything if it's not top quality. Next slide. So far, we've sold one book. We drove an almost 4% close rate last November in a pilot sale. We have 4 more books under development, including 2 that we're co-developing, co-branding, and co-launching with larger strategic partners. Next slide. COVID has both headwinds and tailwinds. First, funding pipelines are frozen, and we recognize that consumers have less discretionary income. However, the pain points we identified are more salient now than ever, and that parents are pulling double duty as teachers, and diversity is such a visceral pain point in the market today. Next slide. So what are we asking for? First, we're closing a $150,000 funding round where we'll invest that money in marketing to validate our acquisition costs and to continue to drive traction by generating revenue, and to de-risk our technical risk by building a working prototype of our automated technology. Second is connections in the publishing market, which we believe is our exit. And finally, driving awareness for our next launch, which is coming in a couple months. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike. Daniel, why don't you start us off this one?
Perfect. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I'm doing this through my mobile phone, but you do what you have to do. Mike, great job. I'm really very impressed by the flow you hit. Honestly, just about every point that I always like to see when I see one of these 5-minute pitches. You made it very clear up front around what are you doing? You're personalizing children's books. And again, I think personalization is definitely a huge factor in a lot more than children's books, right? I liked what you did with the Do I Matter with the story. That really kind of got everybody's attention. The explanation of how you were doing it was good. I like the view on customer reaction. I appreciate the fact that you did the market sizing. You did go through that so fast. I got the 2 billion plus is sort of the total size. Your sub-market piece I actually missed. So what was, and I've got more, a couple, let me come back to that question. I really liked, and I think this is a lesson for everybody on the call, frankly, your competition slide that you did. That was phenomenal. And I love the fact that you did basically a magic quadrant, right? A Gartner magic quadrant type thing that showed where you fit relative to the competition. Highly effective. You gave your price point. I love the data that you had around cost, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value of the customer, et cetera. So that was good. Your projections at 50 million, it was a little, again, you had them there, you went through it so fast, it was a little hard for me to see. I guess I can do the math. If you're doing $50 per book into 50 million, I guess I know what your projection is for what volume looks like. Let's see, when you got into the funding round, the ask, there we go. One of the things I really like to see there is here's the ask and here's the use of funds. You talked about marketing, but you probably had more specific things. So good practice to kind of break out. Here's what that use of funds looks like. And one of the last things, I want to leave some room for Mark here. One of the last things that in my mind was how do you scale this, right? Is it, and again, part of that is I know a little bit about the publishing market, not a lot, a little bit. And, how do you scale with authors, right? How do you get other people to participate? Or is it actually going to be you and your stable of offers? Effectively you become a publisher, right? So that's the part that was a little unclear to me as to where you wanted to go in that vein. So I'll stop there and let you take a shot at any of those questions.
Yeah, I'll hit a couple things. First of all, just thanks for the feedback. I appreciate it. And man, I tell you, 5 minutes is quick. So I am not surprised that some of these went through pretty quick. Our beachhead market is, we selected children with disabilities and sicknesses as our beachhead, both because it's the right thing to do, right? It's tragic. There are hardly any viable substitutes in the market today. So we can really uniquely serve their pain point in a way that neither traditional publishers nor players in the current personalized children's book market today can serve. So we believe that it's also a very low acquisition cost, high virality market. In terms of the use of funds, I've got a more granular breakdown of how I intend to use those funds in the appendix. We don't need to go there, but essentially it's driving at least $50,000 of sales in our next product launch, validating our acquisition costs, and developing a working prototype of our technology, which we've got our approach identified. We just need about probably $20,000 to go and develop a working prototype. and de-risk what I'm just calling our technical feasibility risk. In terms of scaling and supply, there's sort of right now, we've got the in-house competencies to develop stories and drive initial traction. Our midterm approach is one of the other problems we identified in discovery was that there's a lot of people that want to be children's authors. Some of those actually go back to school to get their Masters of Fine Arts in children's literature, only to graduate with a pile of debt and find that they can't dethrone Dr. Seuss and get distribution in Barnes and Noble. So we plan to access that supply and crowdsource our supply of stories. And then I think third would come after an exit event by selling to a publisher and essentially integrating our technology into the best-selling children's books today. So we can contemporize, for instance, the illustrations of, let's say, Dr. Seuss and put your child or grandchild in the story with Dr. Seuss. So that's sort of short, mid, long-term approach on how we're thinking about supplying stories. And I think those are your questions.
Mark, over to you.
Yeah, excuse me, Mike. Great presentation. Awesome concept and idea.
Thanks.
So the only thing I'd add here is, and in light of the 5-minute hurdle, which we all kind of always joke here, it's like there's almost never a 5-minute setup in the real world other than at PitchBreakfast. But if you had the opportunity to refine the 5-minute pitch, or if you wanted to refine it, I would try to hit. And it might just, again, we'll go super tactical into the actual visual, because it might actually help how you deliver information to a new audience member like myself, or a new listener or prospective investor. Is the one big question all along the way was how are you going to do this? And I realize at an early stage company like this, you don't have all that answers, but credibility in the entrepreneur and the team to kind of convert the idea into substance. And so organizing that how. So it's like, how are you going to source the customer? How are you going to source the content? And how are you going to get the content published and physically shipped? That's at least how my brain was kind of seeking structure around answering those ideas. And you can do that, with a timeline. You can do it with just kind of here are those 3 areas that are important to our business. But that's just kind of how I broke it down. Mentally, I was trying to break down what does this business need to do? And then you tie that to your ask, and then that ask, and you actually did it verbally, talking to, I think, to Dan's question. You almost kind of timelined it out. Here's what we're going to do. Because the main questions for me, if I saw you present somewhere and I wanted to have a follow-up meeting, I'd be going right towards customer acquisition and content development. I might be wrong in assuming that the development of the actual physical product is more commodity, but for me, it's the quality of the content. And then how are you converting your customer base or the target market? And then I do love how you've kind of said, hey, our beachhead is children with disabilities and or a sickness or an illness or an ailment. I think that's awesome. It's also not, I don't think it would be, I think it could be helpful for you to actually say hey, we think we can use that targeted focus to our advantage, and even talk more about the potential for those communities, because I know parents that are going through that type of experience often are also very much in touch socially with other parents experiencing those kind of challenges. So looking at that beachhead market and talking about paying some attention to the how we're going to kind of focus on that market, and then leverage the uniqueness of that market in terms of the social ability around the idea. So anyway, I'm kind of giving you more where I wanted to see it go. That doesn't mean you should need to go there, but that's kind of, those are the open areas that open questions that I kind of had in my mind. But great job, and awesome concept. Congratulations on bringing something like this to the market.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it. I'm happy to hit some of those points, or leave it open for Q&A, whatever works best.
Yeah, there's actually a comment here from the audience about how you're going to automate. So this kind of ties into what Mark says, if you want to respond to it. How are you going to automate to get cost of goods down? Will tech need to be done from scratch? And how is the book produced? So some questions on the production aspect of it, and then to what Mark was talking about.
Sure. So what we've done so far, when we started this, we said, okay, we're not going to go over-engineer our technology before we've demonstrated unambiguously product market fit. So we did our initial pilot launch last November for 3 weeks. We used a digital art team to manually create cartoons from pictures. And so that worked. We got a great proof of concept. We now are exploring. We've got our approach identified, which is a facial meshing technology, which it's not brand new. It's brand new in this application, but it essentially takes a picture, like your phone when it recognizes the face when you're taking a picture. It leverages that same core technology, maps a face, will overlay a branded cartoon style on top of that, and pre-program the expressions that are required for different pages of the story. So if page 2, the child needs to be happy, and page 7, they need to be brave, we'll pre-program those expressions and then give the customer the opportunity to approve or retake pictures before we send to print. And then in terms of printing, this is one of my big go, no-go things before starting was, are there printers that can handle one-off orders and still give us access to economies of scale? And there are. So we've got a great printing and fulfillment partner based out of Cary called Lulu, who does that. So I think that sort of answers the question. The reason that we brought on Brian, who I didn't have time to talk too much about, he's a multi-time technical founder, and he's leading that technical development work stream. And we have our approach identified. Like I say, we just need to invest in developing out that working prototype.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And thanks, panelists, on that one. If you've got any other questions for Mike, for the Keepsake Tales team, please bring that to the breakout rooms in just a second.